Good day, two-wheeled friends. Zack here with RevZilla, and welcome to another episode of Daily Rider. Our guest today is the new for 2022 Triumph Tiger Sport 660. So that is the mid-size 3-cylinder engine and basic architecture from the Trident, which Triumph released last year. This bike gets more wind protection, more comfort, more fuel capacity, and a base price of $9,300 American dollars. More to the point, it has all of the things that make a really good daily rider. It's affordable, it's compact, it's comfortable. So I've been looking forward to this one. Let's see how it does, shall we? Here we go. Okie dokie, everybody. Here we go. Triumph Tiger Sport 660. As I said, really been looking forward to this. We can start with the engine, as we often do. 660cc inline triple. This engine, if I remember correctly, is related most closely to the 2008 Street Triple engine. A little bit more info on that in our first ride article. Shameless plug, that link is in the description of this video. You can check it out if you like. Other than that, pretty basic architecture. Steel tube frame is a non-adjustable Showa fork. Axially mounted, brake calipers. It's kind of like basic hardware, nothing super fancy, like very common for European brands these days to have radially mounted calipers and monoblock this and that. And so, it's basic equipment, but pretty good. There's also some really nice touches here, I feel. For example, braided brake lines, 90-degree valve stem on the wheels, so it's easier to access. Stuff like that I think is good. The pipe doesn't go underneath the drain plug for the sump. The oil filter and oil drain are easy to access and it won't dump on your exhaust pipe. These things are smart. Only other thing I think I wanted to point out before we jump on is the saddlebag mounts, which are here, you can see. So they mount into the tail section of the bike, a la other similar motorcycles, I guess. Kawasaki has a similar system for its Ninja 1000 versus 1650. Yeah, and then the low mount pipe, which of course allows for both saddlebags to be full size. It is a $575 option to get two full size saddlebags, which allegedly, I have not tested them, fit a full size helmet each. So it's right in the crosshairs of that technology, or that option is the Kawasaki Versys 650. And I would say the Kawasaki Versys 650 and the Triumph Trident naked bike, on which this bike is based, are the sort of two bikes I think I'll be talking about the most as far as comparison, because I think those are, the one obviously is related, the Trident, and then the Versys 650 is, I don't know, you might say what Triumph was looking at when they built this bike. Alrighty, let's fire it up, shall we? Get this little LCD screen. Get up on the clutch because it's a Triumph. And there you go. Oh, wow. This little 3-cylinder growl. Very familiar. Sort of a sporty face on it. With some little LED running lights here. I think that's just about it. It's a fairly simple bike. I don't even know how I ended up talking that long about it. Oh, the last thing I want to talk about is the seat. So notice it's a one-piece seat with the pillion back here and the rider up here. Do you notice the size difference of the seat? Like how much room there is? Keep that in mind when we get to Lover's Lane and we talk about passenger accommodations. In the meantime, let's ride, shall we? Alright, let's talk about specs right off the bat, as we often do. The actual price, I believe, as it's listed on the website, is $9,295. I rounded up to $9,300. I feel like that's fair. Fuel capacity, 4.5 gallons. That's up from the 3.7 that's available on the Trident, and a bit less than the 5.5 gallons that's available on a Versys 650 while we're doing comparisons. The seat height on this Tiger Sport 660 is 32.8 inches, which on paper is pretty high, I think. I think it feels a little lower than that. And on the Daily Rider scales, with a full tank of gasoline, weighed in at 456 pounds, which, again, quite a bit lighter than a Versys 650. That's probably 30 pounds lighter than a Versys 650 off the top of my head. So that's significant. It does feel compact and small, even if you're looking at 450 pounds and almost a 33-inch seat height. It feels smaller than that, I would say. And the last spec we usually talk about, I think, is horsepower whenever it's claimed anyway, and Triumph claims 80 crank horsepower from this engine, so it'll be a little less than that at the rear wheel, but yeah, good solid number, I'd say, and 47 foot-pounds of torque, I believe. Take a sweet run at this on-ramp, off-ramp situation. Yeah, look at it go. It's nice and sporty, and very comfortable while doing it, I have to say. It's oh hey, this turn right, forward there, friend. Sorry about that. What is happening here? Everybody stop. Jesus Christ. Okay, we scooted past the truck. I completely lost my train of thought. I think where I was going was to talk about general comfort, though, which is very good. Riding position, very much the modern tall rounder, if you will, or sort of road-going quasi-ADV sport touring style of motorcycle. Very, very comfortable. Lots of weight on your feet and on your butt. Nice wide handlebar right out in front of you. Truck not letting me merge. All the comfort things that you want. It's also got an adjustable wind screen. I kind of like it in the low position, actually, because then none of the buffeting or turbulent air coming off the screen hits my helmet. It hits me in the top of the chest, which is actually better for me. But we'll pull it up just as demonstration. So that is maximum height, and you might be able to hear a little bit of wind around my helmet now. But it does offer a lot more wind protection and a pretty good range of adjustment, I think. Plus, it's wicked easy. You just like pull it up, pull it down, stick it wherever you want to stick it, and it stays. It's nice. As for general comfort at these highway speeds, 70 miles an hour is about 5,500 RPM, and it's very, very comfy. You get a little buzz in the handlebar, a little buzz in the foot peg, but it's really not bad at all. If you want to go faster, we can accelerate. We can show you the roll on here. Accelerate up to, if you want to go 80, then you're pulling 6,000 RPM, and now the vibes in the handlebar are a little more pronounced, and definitely more so in the foot pegs, which are, I'm not going to look down at the foot pegs as I go through this curvature. It's not what we're going to do. We'll slow down a little bit, and I will point out that the foot pegs are metal. They do not have any rubber on them. A bike like this, you normally expect to see a rubber-coated foot peg. I kind of like that it's just bare metal. It makes, I don't know, it feels a little more raw, a little sportier, which I appreciate. But if you do get to 6,000 RPM or a little above, if you want to cruise at 80 miles an hour or higher, you will find, I think, that you get a little more tingle in the bars and the pegs. If you do purchase or rent or in some other way get your hands on one of these bikes, you might be inclined to take a long trip, and I think it'd be really good for that. It's a relatively small bike in this day and age, considering big ADVs are 1,200 cc's, but it's very capable, and 4.5 gallon tank. I get in high 40s for fuel mileage, so you're talking 200 mile range, really, which is pretty good. Again, not quite as good as a Versys 650, which you often get mid 50s. I think that if I were a little more polite on the throttle during my time on this bike, I probably could easily get fuel mileage in the mid 50s, in which case you bring your range north of 200. But that Versys 650's got a 5.5 gallon tank, so this bike's gonna struggle to hold a candle to that range. Still pretty good, and a comfortable place to sit. Actually, while we're talking about range and comfort, I should say, after about, what was it, a couple hours maybe? Yeah, an hour and a half, I got a little tired of this seat. The seat is fine. It's not I'm not gonna pick a wild bone with Triumph over the seat, but it's a budget construction, you can kind of tell. And I think because of the nature of the bike, it ended up being kind of tall, has longer suspension than the Trident, for example. The engineers at Triumph were keen to scoop out the seat a little bit and make it low and approachable, so that it wasn't like a 33.5-inch seat height. And I think the padding's a little thin, in my opinion. So if you're tall, I would go on the hunt for a slightly thicker, slightly taller seat. I think that might be a little more comfortable for you. Plus, yeah, you won't sink through the padding quite as quickly. All right, last thing to talk about before I forget on this stretch of road is mirrors, and these mirrors are excellent. Full marks to Triumph for the mirrors. They're out, they're in the right spot, they're nice and clear, really good, really like them. All right, into the neighborhood and the stop sign challenge. Go down to first gear, we go down to 0 miles an hour, no putting our feet down. Okay, got one, wasn't super graceful, but we got it. Which makes sense because this bike is very balanced. The chassis, as I said, it feels compact and small. It doesn't feel too top heavy. The rake of the front end is something like 23 degrees, which is really steep for a bike like this anyway. Yeah, you'd almost be concerned that it would feel twitchy and a little bit unstable, but it doesn't at all. In my experience, it's quite good. And I think it makes low speed handling very direct, and of course the 17-inch wheels help that too. Oh! Tried to wait out that person's stop sign routine and couldn't make the footless stop. Sorry, team. Here we go. Let's try one more time. Oh yeah, very good one. Nice, that felt great. Another reason I think the Tiger Sport 660 is pretty good around town is the gearing's fairly short. It's not something I mentioned on the freeway, but I should have, which is I think it's too short. This next stop sign, we will try a footless stop in second gear, and I think you'll find it's pretty reasonable. So here we go, second gear, come to a stop, no feet down. That was really not graceful. But the point is, we'll do another one of those. The point is the gearing's a little too short. I would go down a couple teeth in the rear sprocket, maybe even up a tooth in the front sprocket, just to give it a little bit longer legs. You probably get slightly better fuel economy on the freeway, and first gear just doesn't need to be as low as it is, in my opinion. Again, there's a second gear stop sign departure. It's very tame, very gentle. Yeah, just my 2 cents. All right. Last stop sign in the challenge. We're going to go for another second gear one. Look at that, right? Clutch out, 10 miles an hour basically, second gear. What do I need first gear for? And it's not like it's an off-road bike, right? I mean, you know, it's not designed for going off-road. It's not like it's got a 21-inch front wheel and you think like, oh, you know, maybe the first gear is real short so you can kind of crawl through rocky sections if you're doing your ADV trip. But I don't think that's what they had in mind with that bike, certainly not by the design. So, I don't know. Yeah, again, I don't want to harp on it anymore. Another thing I'll say about this bike, though, the fueling is very good. That's a Triumph trademark, and the fueling is quite good. While we're on the topic of comparing to the Versys 650, it's better than the Versys 650. Definitely. The transmission is not as nice as the up-spec Bonnevilles and the more expensive Tigers, but it's still quite good. Very positive feedback. I've obviously got lots to say. I'm talking about the transmission in Lover's Lane. We're supposed to be talking about passenger accommodations. Passenger accommodations on this bike, pretty good. Remember the seat that I showed you earlier? How it's like got a lot of space for the rider. It seems like there's sort of room for my butt plus a half or even 2, which means when the passenger sits on the back, they kind of like, if you sit forward near the tank, they kind of want to fall off the front of the passenger lip and down into the rider section, which is a little bit awkward. So I found I had to sit back in the seat a little bit. Then my lady thought that the seat was fairly comfortable. Legroom's pretty good. She did say that it's perched up pretty high, so she likes that because she can see, but the downside to that is on the freeway, wind protection wasn't very good, and this screen, even in the high position, doesn't do much for the passenger. So all things considered, the basics of the passenger accommodations, quite good. Just a couple little oddities that you might find your passenger complaining about, in case that helps. Okie dokie, so we dip into the curvy section of the daily rider route. We are stuck in traffic, unfortunately, but I can tell you that I spent a good deal of time on some very twisty roads on the Tiger Sport 660, and it's really, really good. it's just like you look through a corner and it falls in. It never takes any effort to make any corrections or inputs. It's extremely balanced, and I think it would be really confidence inspiring for someone looking to ride more twisty roads, but they don't want something uncomfortable. If you think you need a sport bike to have fun on twisty roads, you've heard me say it here before that you do not, and this bike is a perfect example. It's not a sport bike, but boy is it good on a twisty section of road. All right, back onto surface streets here. Let's take a run up through the revs, shall we? It's not wild. It's not going to surprise you with how fast it is. It's just very, very linear, and it sounds good. It sounds like a classic Triumph triple, which ain't nothing wrong with that. Going across some of the lumps and bumps going down this hill make me realize that I should talk about suspension in some detail. One thing that this bike has is a non-adjustable fork. We talked about that before, I think, and the balance of the suspension is okay, I think, but it's not great. It feels a little bit budget. Sometimes when I get on the brakes, I feel like the nose dives a lot, and you sort of think, oh, there's not a lot of compression damping there. But then when you hit a real sharp bump, it really feel like it kind of blasts you in the wrists. And I struggled to get the rear preload to a place that I really liked. When I got the bike, it was cranked all the way up, so I backed it off and I put it in the middle to try to be, you know, scientific about how I tuned it. And in the end, it's fine, but certainly 2 up with 2 full-size people on there, it's not great. It's a little soft. So, you know, the Triumph built the bike to a price point to a certain extent, and it shows to a certain extent. Non-adjustable clutch lever, non-adjustable fork, one-piece seat, you know, these are things that you get when you buy a pretty capable sport tourer for $9,000. So I don't begrudge him for it, but it's worth pointing out. There we go. Our turn. I knew it was going to happen. On to Vermont Street. Give Vermont Street a honk, shall we? Ah. So along this stretch of road, we sometimes have some general conclusions to come to. I think, again, to compare this to Triumph's own Trident, I think the folks at Triumph did a really good job. It's a good version of a sport touring Trident, in my opinion. Everything works well. It doesn't really disappoint me in any big ways. So kudos to Triumph for that. As for how it compares to the Versys 650, it's a dead heat for me. I don't know. You know, the Versys has some luxury features. You know, if you get the LT, you do get the handguards, which is kind of a nice thing. I don't know, they both have adjustable wind protection. The Versys, I believe, has slightly more adjustability in the suspension and some of the control levers. But, you know, it's very, very close. I think the big thing that this bike does that the Versys does not is be a little bit smaller. It's more compact. It's noticeably sort of more trim, which is not nothing. That's really worth considering, I think. All right, pull up to the stoplight. Do we have time to talk about the dash? Maybe. Let's try. Big tack across the top, fuel gauge, gear precision indicator here, speed, very simple. And then down here, you control these menus with these buttons here. So you can cycle through trip 1, brightness, service interval, engine coolant, fuel trip status, that kind of thing. If you jump into the main menu here, you can adjust display setup, some of the things that you see and don't see on the dash. Interestingly, you see this gear position indicator here. So I'm in neutral, I'm in first, I'm in neutral. If I'm not on that screen, I'll cycle away from it. You'll see the gear position indicator comes back up to the bottom left of this part of the dash. I only bring that up because if you are on the gear position indicator section of the dash because you have it toggled, that's where you see the clock. And that is the only place that you can see the clock on the Tiger Sport 660, which I think is a little strange. I couldn't find the clock for the longest time, and I found it in the dash. I adjusted it, I made the time correct, but I was like, I don't see it anywhere. and you have to go to the gear position indicator section of the dash, and you have to have it toggled on in order to see what time it is. Okie doke, everybody. Let's see what kind of disrepair our off-road testing route is in currently. Woo, still pretty puddled up. By golly gosh. As I said, the Tiger Sport 660 is not an off-road motorcycle, but if you go into bike setup here, you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to go down to TC, which of course stands for traction control, and I'm going to go to disabled, which of course means disabled. Oh yeah, there are ride modes. I forgot to tell you about that. You can do road, or you can do rain, or road, or if you want rain, or road. So there you go. There are your 6 options. All right, let's boogie. Woo! Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. That was too fast, that was too fast, that was too fast. Bad idea. Whew. Okay. You know, the mud with these with these sport touring tires, not ideal, I would say. But those of you who watched my S1000RR daily rider where I came down the same route, you'll notice I'm feeling a little better on this bike. Part of it is that the puddle is smaller and I have a little more room. The other part of it is just the riding position, right? Wide handlebar, feels kind of dirt bikey. The tires on this bike are no good. The suspension isn't made for this, but it feels, you know, if you want to trundle down a dirt road to a campsite, as I often say, you'll be a-okay on this bike. And if you want to hit a little jump, yep. Wow, it didn't even bottom out. Impressive. Impressive. I thought for sure it was going to bottom out when I hit that, but it didn't. So, you know, those little marks for the suspension there that I was throwing shade at earlier. Yeah. All right, now we see if it'll do a wheelie. Spoiler alert, yes, it will. Look at it go. Good fun. Good fueling, good engine, good sound, good wheelies, good bike. It's a good bike, kids. I like it. As we head for the office, we can go for a back in. It's not going to work very well. There's a slipper clutch, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and non-switchable ABS for safety, which is good. But I do wish you could shut off the rear ABS just because I like to hoon around, and I think this bike could be darn good at it if I do say so myself. But alas, only little ones like that. That's all you're really going to be able to do. Get the ABS pumping in the lever. Oh, all the bikes are dumped outside. We got some filming going on inside. Look at all this stuff. Wow. Everyone parked like real jack wagons, so I'm not going to be able to do the U-turn test very accurately. Thanks for nothing. I think it's going to be pretty good with U-turn tests. So we're going to line up at this line, just inside it, just to be fair if there were a car there. And we're going to go full lock to the left. 2 parking spaces? Not quite, no. 2.1, 2.2, something like that. It's pretty good. And as I said, in general, the manners are quite good. Okie dokie, everybody. There we have it. Daily ride on Triumph's new Tiger Sport 660. That was fun, wasn't it? I had fun. I hope you had fun. It's a purposeful looking daily rider, isn't it? A little bit aggressive, a little bit practical. Makes a nice sound, you know? Yeah, sounds good. Works well. It's a high quality piece. All right, let's jump into some Instagram questions. And then after that, we'll put on the Daily Rider leaderboard. We'll talk about how it compares to other motorcycles. And then I'll let you get on with the rest of your day. Okay, everybody. First question here is from Tutorer Han. I think I said that right. Who says, name 3 things that are better than the Versys and 3 that are worse. I'm a 2021 Versys owner, bought it based on your review, so I trust your judgment. Sell it and buy a Triumph or keep the Versys. Whew. A lot of pressure here, lots and lots of pressure. I think comparing to the Versys 650 is the right thing to do because I think, as I said before, very comparable. So, off the top of my head, 3 things that are better than the Versys. It's smaller. It's noticeably more compact, and I really think that that's good. sounds better. It has more character, more panache, more charisma and charm and kind of appeal in general. It's got a little Euro appeal. Last thing, fueling. The fueling is much better than a Versys, and I think that that's notable, especially on a daily ride if that's what you're going to do. Okay, so 3 things that are worse than a Versys. Range. It just won't go as far. Doesn't hold as much gas, and it won't go as far on one tank. So that's something if you care about that. I think passenger comfort is something that this bike is not going to do as well as a Versys. I think the Versys seat is a little better in general, and I think the arrangement's a little better, and I feel like in stock form anyway, the shock is just a little more ready to handle the weight, perhaps because the bike's heavier with the Versys. So that's another thing, passenger comfort, in my opinion. And then the last thing that it does that's worse than a Versys, I don't know, it's more expensive, a little bit more expensive anyway. Oh wait, no, it's not, is it? No, when it comes to price, I believe a Versys LT with bags and handguards and all that jazz is $9,999, so 10 grand. And I did the math with the $575 extra dollars you have to pay for the luggage to get with this bike. I think it came out to $129 cheaper for a Triumph than a Versys, which is, it's in the noise basically. Anyway, all that's to say, it's a dead heat. It's a dead heat between them. I haven't tried the luggage that comes on this bike. I can't say for sure if it's better or worse than the Versys, but it sounds like it's very comparable, fits a full-size helmet. So I don't think you should sell your Versys and buy the Triumph. I don't think it's worth doing that, but worth considering for your next bike, certainly, if you're after some of the things I mentioned. Next question is from Not Trent SZYD. Sizid? Not Trent Sizid? Who asks, how does it compare to the Tracer 900 GT? So Tracer 9 GT, I think they call it now. Is that right? I think. It's basically, to answer your question, a smaller, more budget-oriented version of a Tracer 9. It's not as expensive. It's not as fast. It's not as advanced. It doesn't have as many options. It doesn't come with saddlebags. It doesn't come with heated grips. It doesn't come with a quick shifter. It doesn't come with some of the things that a Tracer 9 does. And it doesn't come with all the horsepower and kind of... the Tracer 9 is a lot faster than this bike, and it's got some sizzle that this bike does not have from the engine. But it's more expensive, quite a bit more expensive. So I think that's where it fits in. It's a smaller, simpler version of a Tracer 9 in many ways. Next question is from Moel Rebuilding, who asks, is it enough or should they have gone with the 765 engine? Good question, and I think this is enough. Yes, it is enough. Sure, it's not super fast, but it doesn't need to be. It shouldn't be. This is right. This is correct. This is the right choice. If you want something with more sizzle, get a Tracer 9. Get something with a bigger engine. I don't know. I don't want to see... I like the simplicity and the practicality and the basicness, that's a word, of this bike. I think the engine choice is correct, even if it's not stretch your arm fast. I think it's good. I like it. Last question is from Matty Bow 984, who asks, can you describe it only using weather analogies? I love questions like this. I don't know if I can, but I'm going to try. The Triumph Tiger Sport 660 is sort of like a warm late spring morning. When you sit in the sun, you think, this is perfect. It's absolutely perfect. This weather is so good. A light breeze, brushing your hair around a little bit. And then the sun goes behind a cloud and you think, it's just a little too cold now. I don't want the cloud there. So, and then the cloud moves and you think, yes, this is exactly right. This weather is absolutely perfect. So it's a very partly cloudy, warm, beautiful morning. That's what the Tiger Sport 660 is in weather terms. It is just about as good as a daily rider can be, I think, with a few clouds in the sky that we talked about during the ride. I hope that helps. I can't imagine it will. But thank you as always for your questions. Stick with me. We're going to stick this sucker on the Daily Rider leaderboard. Here we go.
All right, everybody, here we are at the Daily Rider leaderboard. You can see we finally got some slightly more permanent graphics up there. It looks a little better, right? Daily Rider 2021. Yeah, wow, cool. Got signs printed. I'm making it now, right? Hopefully you like it. If you don't like it, lie to me. Thanks very much. Yeah, so pretty clear that the Triumph Tiger Sport 660 is going to go above the S1000 RR. But what's most intriguing, obviously, is where it falls on this leaderboard, right? How does it compare to all the bikes we've ridden so far? It's arguably a better commuter bike than any of these bikes, if you're talking about price and size, potentially. Next to each other in a garage, I'm taking a 1250 GS. Fits me, super comfortable, features are great, everything is super premium, the brakes are great, the transmission's great. But you know, if size is more important to you, you're going to be looking more at an NC 750 or a Versys 650 or a Tiger 850 or a Tiger Sport 660. So, and in that case, you know, this bike is really, really, really good. So, to answer the burning question, is it better than a Versys 650? Does it finish higher? Would it finish higher in 2021 than a Versys 650? That's so tough. Maybe it's just expectations, but I'm always sort of impressed with a Versys 650. It always feels like it's more than the sum of its parts. It impresses me for reasons that I didn't see coming. I always think like, oh man, I forgot, like, it's got like nice grunt, even though the engine doesn't sound all that good. I don't know, whereas the Tiger Sport 660 feels like it's what it should be. No more, no less. And I'm stalling because I don't know what to tell you. I'm gonna put it next to the Versys 650 in height because I don't know. Yeah, maybe it's better. We'll slide it up. It's a little better. If size and engine character are super important to you, you're going to want a Tiger Sport 660. If an aftermarket that overfloweth with options and lots of forum chatter and perhaps some passenger comfort and ultimate fuel range is important, Versys 650 is going to be your bike. But I will say, next to each other in the garage, a Tiger Sport's pretty good. It's pretty good. All right, there you have it, everybody. Daily Rider Leaderboard is updated with the Tiger Sport 660. Thank you so much for hanging out. Hope you learned something. Hope you had fun. Hope to see you next time.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. Dude bro's clipping the barriers. Uh-oh. Oh, jeez. Oh my God. Do not envy truck drivers in a city. Oh my goodness.